Hello, back with ancient cosmography. Um, so I've shown before how this is how the Isle of Arran in the Irish Sea is probably the cauldron of Fingal, and also might be a cauldron referred to in Welsh mythology as well. And there's actually some like ancient megaliths on the Isle of Arran that are referred to as the cauldron seat of Fingal, I believe. So, like Fingal's cauldron seat or something like that. So, its association as with cauldrons is, presumably very ancient. And so I found this in Hamlet's Mill, a little possible mention of this. The prose tales in the Renaissance. A great whirlpool there is between Ireland and Scotland. So here's Ireland, here's Scotland. On the north. So this is the north, like this is the northernmost part of Ireland, basically. This is northernmost part of Britain. It is the meeting of many seas. It resembles an open cauldron which casts the draught down and up, and its roaring is heard like far-off thunder. So, to some extent, that might be true, that it actually is like a cauldron here, and that, it's frothy waves and all this stuff. But I think, in mythology, there's often a kind of tricky, like riddle way of conveying stuff, just like in the Bible with the parables. So I think it's also referring to this island that's right between Ireland and Scotland, which is associated by the natives with being a cauldron, apparently, and actually looks like a cauldron, that it has like, this would be the cauldron, this would be all this stuff like shooting up out of it, just like it says, an open cauldron which casts the draught down and up, so it shoots out its contents. So yeah, there you go. Some possible reference, and I don't know what book that's from. Stokes. So, and then I've been, studying other stuff of Finn McCool, and I'm realizing that that the finger, his finger that is bitten off, or no, not his finger actually, Benandonner's finger, baby Finn is bites off the finger of Benandonner, and I think it's from the race from Scotland to Ireland to see who touches it first and thereby becomes Lord. And I think, in Ireland they just changed it around because they didn't like the idea of Britain being their Lord, so they just kind of scooped out the essence of this story, and so they just changed it to where it's just that the two giants are on either side of the Irish Sea trying to like fight each other or something. But I think that it's part of this race. And in the Fenian cycle, it does mention a race. I think maybe a race to Ireland or somewhere. But it doesn't have all these details in it. So yeah, like in the story, Sive the deer, so this is the deer's head, and this is her front hoof or whatever, front leg or arm or whatever, disguised Fingal as a baby. So this is Fingal being disguised as a baby, and this is his mouth, nose, whatever, and tucked him into a cradle. So then this is the cradle. Like basically the baby and the cradle are both the Isle of Mull, and Sive is just part of the adjacent Scottish mainland, a couple peninsulas there. And but then so he is racing against Benandonner, the red man. So it seems that this arm represents Benandonner trying to reach to Ireland, and this arm represents Fingal himself trying to reach to Ireland. And so there's a story that says that Fingal bites off Benandonner's finger, his magic finger or whatever. And so it doesn't give much explanation of it, but I think that it only fits within this context that, you know, this is Benandonner's arm, this is his hand, this is his thumb, you know, it looks like a thumb, and then this looks like should be like a finger, like a middle finger or something, but it's like just the nub, like it got bitten off or whatever. So, and when Benandonner's magic middle finger almost reached to Ireland, baby Fingal bit it off. So, baby Fingal bites it off. So I think that the finger is also Rathlin, because now that I realize that the same thing can be multiple things, like Finn's thumb is both, you know, one of the small isles, and it's also Soe, and it also seems to be another isle in the Outer Hebrides. So similarly, the middle finger, I think, is Rathlin here, but it's also, I think it also is this. I don't know, there's a good chance it's also this, and especially, you know, another one that's up here that looks even more like a bigger middle finger or whatever. Or it could be honestly that these are all the fingers, that it's 1, 2, 3, and then there's a big one here that basically baby Finn bit off all this dude's fingers except for the thumb. I mean, is a thumb a finger? I think it's a finger, but some may disagree. So yeah, you know, I did it this way so that it would look bigger here, so it would fit better as the finger. But also you have to realize that it's not necessarily just the island of Rathlin, but also the seamounts around it, which extend further than, you know, the coastal seamounts, for instance. So you could say the finger, you know, you spit it out and it's under the sea, and then the island is just the top of it poking up. But it definitely looks like a finger, you know, as much as an island can look like a finger. Also, like in the story, you know, they cook the salmon of knowledge, like Fingal cooks the salmon. And I think the salmon of knowledge is the Outer Hebrides here. And this is Fingal's head. So I think this part, maybe not this part, maybe this is just considered his head or his regular part of his head, but I think at least these peninsulas of Skye are the fire that's burning that's cooking the fish, because it says he cooks the fish over a fire, and that it gets cooked, and you know, in some depictions it's cooked on the bottom and it's red on the bottom, and that certainly fits here because, you know, I increased the saturation, but it just brings out the colors that are already there. So we see that on the northwestern part of coast of the Outer Hebrides, or at least this part of it, and also basically this part too, it's green, but it's on this southeastern part facing towards Skye where it's redder. And you know, so that makes sense if it's getting cooked from here, that it would be more red on the side facing there. So it fits the story quite well. And so, you know, Fingal, he famously puts his thumb in his mouth. So it's like a lot of stories about him even other stories reference him putting a thumb or finger in his mouth. So it just solidifies that this is the avatar of his face, and this is the avatar, or at least one avatar of one of his hands. And the angle of the Hebrides somewhat fits this ancient, I think this is a Scottish stone carving. So it's, really the angle here is more sharp, but, it could be related. Yeah, or it could be that this represents like the Milky Way, and it could even be that it represents both this and the Milky Way, because a lot of times it's all as above, so below. So every part of the earth represents some part of the sky and vice versa. Yeah. See what else we got here.